2023 has been an interesting year for me when discovering new comics to read, but from the various I've read, none of them come close to the Metabarons. The best way to describe the Metabarons is what if Berserk's Golden Age arc was set in the infinite void that is space, meshed with a generational story in the same vein as JoJo's, with spectacles that surpass even the most iconic shots in Star Wars. It's a story that is strange and really feels like it came from this faraway time that is yet to come, with many of its concepts just feeling so uniquely foreign and disturbing. It is a story that pushes the sci-fi genre into directions I never really thought could be possible. But what's also fascinating is just how this story was conceived. To put it simply, this story is a story that shouldn't have existed in the first place. During the 1970s, an eccentric individual by the name of Alejandrojodorowsky had been recognized for his more surreal ways of storytelling, with films like El Topo and even more so, The Holy Mountain, movies that during this era seemed odd and almost vile in nature. It was no surprise that they were played during the midnight hours of the cinema, almost in the same way you would watch adult cartoons in the midnight hours on Cartoon Network. But after the overall good reception from the audience after watching these films, Jodorowsky decided it was time to work on his most strangest film yet, that film being an adaptation of one of the best sci-fi novels ever made, Frank Herbert's Dune.
He said, I want to produce you anything. What do you want to do? I say, Dune.
Now, as you can imagine, this is the mid-70s. It was a time when 2001: A Space Odyssey was the best reference to pull from when it came to making a huge sci-fi film, and a time where Star Wars was on the horizon. And for Jodorowsky, this was a challenge to create something that was never seen before, a movie that would have changed the landscape of what was even possible in a film. And for that, he needed to assemble a team that would be capable of helping him achieve such a task. Incredible artists H.R. Giger, Mobius, and Chris Foss were recruited for set and character designs, while Dan O'Bannon was to be in charge with the special effects.
I thought I was pretty well prepared for him. I thought I had a very clear image of him as this very erudite lunatic.
All who were inspired by Jodorowsky's vision of the film he was striving to make. It didn't matter how daunting the task was, just the simple idea of creating the most epic film in history was enough for all of these creators to unite as one and see this through. But in the end, just believing in the dream wasn't enough. Unfortunately, due to funding, the sheer scale of the film, and an actor who wanted to be paid $100,000 an hour, and just higher-ups in Hollywood decided that this film just wasn't possible. And it's a shame, because when you look at the amount of work put into just pre-production and designs, while not being an adaptation that followed Frank Herbert's novel, it definitely felt like there was something special brewing, with the only proof of that being a 3,000-page script filled with drawings and designs of the movie that could have been. However, everything wasn't really lost. In the following years, as you know, H.R. Giger, Chris Foss, and Dan O'Bannon went on to collaborate and create the famous Xenomorphs we all know and love today, while Jodorowsky and Mobius saw an opportunity to take the ideas that had been planted on the failed Dune project and made into something entirely new. Until this day, one of the most influential stories ever. The Incal. And while I would like to stay and talk about the Incal, it's the story that is birthed next to that fascinates me. Introduced during the Incal, John DeFool, the main character of the story, crosses paths with a secondary character that goes by the name No Name, and his mission is to capture John DeFool in exchange for his son who has been captured. And because of his charisma and role in the story being so compelling that it became necessary for him to have his own story. The way this story works is with 5 different generations of these warriors all existing in the far reaches of the future. Ulthone, Agnar, Steelhead, Aghora, and finally, No Name, all who are a part of one dynasty that goes by the name of Kastaka, each new successor having to earn a birthmark from the previous generation. The way they go about earning this birthmark is by undergoing some of the most grueling training that pushes each of them to their limits. The first training is to be put into any situation that involves survival around the age of 5. Whether it be learning to survive in harsh environments where huge pterodactyl-like creatures are ready to grab you at any second, or destroying meteorites before they destroy you, and the list goes on. The second part of the training is removing yourself from any emotion, which takes place between the ages of 5 and 7, depending if the father deems them ready for such a trial. Or the most toughest part, the father cutting off one limb from their child to test their endurance to pain. What's even worse is failure to pass this test results on the father killing their child on the spot and trying to birth a son that is worthy to pass this test. And if the child does pass this test, the severed limb is replaced with a metallic version of it. The third part of the training, which takes place over the course of years, is to implant countless mini-bombs within the child. So once they do become successor, they'll be able to destroy entire galaxies. Which brings us to the last part of the training, that being to fight in a duel to the death against the father. And these take form in so many ways, from space duels to hand-to-hand combat, and failure to defeat your father means ultimate death, and you were never capable of becoming the next Metabaron. But despite everything that was mentioned, the Metabarons also follow a strict code of honor, which is called Bushitaka, named after Japanese's Bushido. And the way this works is that it asks for those who practice it to be victorious in all things at all costs, whether it be in death or forsaking your own family member. The Metabarons also have a list of weapons and abilities they use, from cybernetically implanted lasers, swords that can disintegrate anything in its path, advanced spaceships, traversal at the speed of light, or psychic abilities that exhibit immense power. It is insane how powerful these warriors are. But the one that stood out to me the most was Book 7, which follows the story of the Metabaron Aghora. To give you some context, Steelhead, Aghora's father, and the previous Metabaron is a full-on cyborg. His head is composed of nothing more than cables and machinery, while his body is still for the most part human. His father being the cause for his appearance, who had blown his head off due to him being a son born out of an incest relationship. The only way he survived was to completely make his head out of steel, and during his life he fell in love with a woman named Doña Vicenta de Rocha, who was the daughter of the president of the Confederation Army. And after a galactic war over an empire, the two lovers settled down, and months later it was discovered that Doña Vicenta was pregnant with 2 twins, one male and one female. However, it was discovered only one of them could be saved, and Doña Vicenta, who during the war contracted a fatal disease, told her husband to save her daughter. And up to this point, every generation of the Metabaron has been male, but for the love of his wife, Steelhead saves the girl. There's only one problem. The girl's head was hollow and the twins share one brain, but to mitigate that, Steelhead uses advanced technology to take the shared brain of the twins and transplant it into his now daughter Aghora. And with that, Aghora is born with the brain of a male and a body of a female. But unfortunately, Doña Vicenta doesn't have much time left to live. Her disease is quickly eating away at her. The tender moment with her daughter is brief, as Steelhead devises a plan to slow down the disease, and he does it by freezing his wife, which preserves her in her state of near death, only allowing her to watch her daughter grow and forever living with the memory of the few moments of motherhood she experienced. 5 years go by and training begins. Aghora at the age of 5 was so strong-willed she was able to tame a dangerous creature and make it obey her, and it becoming her mount and friend, which she used to destroy meteors around her father's spaceship. By the age of 7, Aghora had to test her endurance to pain, in which her father uses a ham slicer and slowly slices away at her entire left hand, resulting in Aghora losing her hand and in its place a new left hand fused with her flesh and blood made of metal. Her father also lasering her chest so her breast can never grow, allowing him to acknowledge his daughter not as his daughter but as the son he had lost. By the age of 16, Aghora had been through some of the toughest training a person could go through, from becoming an executioner at a prison where she killed 200 prisoners a day and fighting gigantic beasts, while also having mastered the way of Bushitaka through patience and discipline. Now her final test to defeat her father in a duel, who has now completely replaced every part of his body with machinery down to his very bones, so that he wouldn't have to bear the feeling of losing his wife Doña Vicenta. Steelhead becoming more machine than man and removing every drop of his humanity, which makes it even more heartbreaking when he has to face his daughter who will forever be a reminder of the humanity he's given up and the person he loves. With the duel lasting 3 long days, and just when Steelhead seems unbeatable, Aghora devises one final blow, one that would destroy her father once and for all. She takes up her sword, and with one sword strike, Aghora shatters her mother's frozen body to multiple pieces, ending her life. This act emotionally affecting her father, who desperately tries to put his lover back together. And it's in that moment Aghora taking the opportunity to freeze her father and plunge him into the darkness of space. Aghora now proving she can carry the legacy that has been passed down to her. What comes after is Aghora having to now prove herself to the Empire which she protects, and herself being female, it's rather difficult for the Empire and its people to even take her seriously. Their reasoning being simply, she's a woman, nothing more. But because of her willingness to protect the Empire, she ends up proving herself to the Emperors of the Empire, and proceeds to protect the Empire from any galactic threats, earning her respect and recognition from the Empire, which just looks incredible by artist Juan Jimenez. However, one day while earning her reward in a ceremony, Aghora's childhood pet, Deianira, suddenly becomes violent and starts murdering citizens at the ceremony, Aghora having to put her to sleep and carry her back to the ship. She then runs some tests to see what was the cause of this sudden behavior, and what she finds is that her pet has succumbed to a tumor and doesn't have long to live. The only choice left for her is to put her only friend out of their misery, causing Aghora to shed her first and last tear and discovering for the first time what her father had learned, the feeling of love and sadness, in what leads to a genuine moment of humanity for her. It didn't matter how many millions of enemies she killed, she couldn't bear the weight of losing her friend. Aghora confused as to what she's feeling since this practically was new to her. She grows to despise her very own existence as she realizes all she knows is how to bring death and destruction because she was trained for it, but she doesn't know how to bring about life. Her only answer to this is to birth a child of her own. Aghora, due to her pride, refuses to have any sex with anyone, and what she does to give birth is to take cells from her male brain tissue, which she then changes into sperm and inserts into herself, becoming pregnant. which then leads to what I describe as a mother genuinely caring for the cultivation of her own child, showing that the clan can be more than just destroyers and actually have some level of humanity to them. This also leads to a very scary moment where Aghora immediately has to fend off 1,000,000 assassins literally after giving birth, a sidekick fight against evil witches who threatened the empire and planned her assassination, Aghora's child being the one to actually end the fight in a badass scene where his psychic abilities activate, and the naming of her child, Aghora giving him the name of No Name since his role is bigger than his identity, and then it begins, the training. Aghora mutilates her son's right ear, replacing it with a metallic one. She allows him to have pets of his own, only later making him kill them so he wouldn't shed a tear like she did once before. She teaches him the ways of Bushitaka, removes his taste buds, implants him with weapons to destroy entire galaxies, tests his endurance to pain, and finally the toughest part of his initiation. And tragically, he wins. Aghora's last words being, "Now you are worthy to carry the name of Metabaron. I am proud of you." And as she passes, no matter how much he trained, No Name's cries after the death of his mother. He rises and vows to never birth a son of his own, for this tradition is cruel. Nothing will beat him, nothing. He will be the last Metabaron. No Name, after following the same path as his mother and ancestors, a path of destruction and incredible achievement, but also a path of loneliness and sadness. No Name one day cursing his entire family for their actions, even his own mother for not allowing him to have his own emotions, his own humanity, coming to the conclusion that mere destruction serves no purpose. No Name in a fit of rage, almost squashing a bug which crossed his path, and he stops himself right before his hands squash it. And in that moment, he decides that he will never destroy again. For the first time, a Metabaron felt pity, which leads to one of the most beautiful moments in comics ever, and I mean that with every ounce of my being. Again, Aghora being my favorite example of this, seeing her struggle with her humanity, her masculinity and womanhood, and the weight of her ancestors' legacy, and how that weight is the thing that ultimately ends her life, but she still found a glimpse of humanity in the end by being a mother and feeling sadness for her only friend. I think if we look at our real world, it's hard to see the good in humanity. Some days are harder than others, but it's stories like the Metabarons that are capable to show the darkest parts of humanity but can still infuse us with a hope for a better tomorrow, and to believe that one day we as a collective can change the world. And I think that's some good storytelling right there. Thanks for watching, and thanks to anyone who has stuck around to watch any of my videos. Thanks for watching, and thanks to anyone who has stuck around to watch any of my videos. But like and subscribe, hit the bell notification to get notified whenever I upload a new video, and I hope you guys find comics that stick with you like this one did for me. And I'll talk to you guys soon.